everybody, and welcome back to another of my Warhammer 40k short story readings. The reason I'm actually speaking before getting into the story is because this one's actually a bit different today. This isn't actually a story come up with by myself. This is in fact a story submitted by a member of my Discord and one of my subscribers, Axel, and it's actually about my Storm Knights playthrough, which I think is really awesome to see, me mucking about in Chapter Master getting this sort of engagement, so I very much appreciate it. The next short story I've written, and I have actually written it this time, is going to be about the Lamenters, and the one after that will be what the Emperor should have done in meeting Lorgar, but that probably won't be for another 2-3 weeks. So, without further ado, A Knight's Courage by Axel. In a great hall, whose great windows allowed glassworks to reflect their coloured drawings on the knights inside, bathed the assembled Astartes with holy light. Around 100 battle brothers, all clad in their black armour, accompanied by their yellow trim, carried their heraldry proudly. They received last words of encouragement. My holy bolter put to the side, as one serf attached a purity seal near my red aquila, a customary colour. This was no mere paper. It swore an oath of vengeance. I looked at the sergeant who stood in front. He had forgotten his name and that of his brothers and chapters in battle. Still he fought skillfully and defended the monastery like any other member of the Sixth. I raised my bolter slowly, looking at the last word we would receive, looking at the last word most of us would receive in this great hall. Sadly I reflected some brothers who were guarding the defensive perimeter of the fortress monastery. They had chosen to do so zealously, to avoid others missing our last sight of our sacred temple and hall. We preached our last words and screamed with fury and oaths for vengeance. For Talanor, they will be avenged. Senator Venorius stood up from his throne, symbolizing his absolute rule over Talanor in the chapter, even now while it was being contested by traitors. Behind him, a huge rosette contained the image of the Emperor. The chapter master raised his sword, a masterfully crafted power blade, and he turned. We only saw the black of his armoured backpack as he put his blade on the ground and kneeled before the Emperor's image. For the Emperor and the Lion, we followed his words in a last battle cry. I looked from my fortified position, overseeing the mighty walls. A once beautiful plain stood below. Green grasses, bushes, and creatures once lived. Now it had been bombarded into a lifeless plain of black. Our flanks were covered by two hills, or rather extensions of the scree our fortress monastery now stood over. The walls were the wisest point of assault. We and they knew it. Our mighty wall had been tested by a constant barrage until mere moments ago. It had been a structural threat, but it had posed the greatest danger. Now the traitors gathered in assaults. They outnumbered us greatly. Soon they would enter the killing zone, where the cultists had been slaughtered mere moments before. It was a huge armoured assault, led by demonic engines running in their perverse forms. They were obscured by huge clouds of dust from the bombardment. But this was no mere cloud. It was more akin to a sea, as Knight Novus thought loudly to himself. I and Knight Valerius stood in our shooting positions. 50 meters to our left, a defense battery stood ready to show its might. "Knights, fire at will!" the sergeant ordered through the vox. He was somewhere along our 1-kilometer section of the wall we had to protect. Well, rather, shoot them down and retreat before they overwhelmed us. The worshippers of the blood god were attempting a mad rush to the walls. We felt the earth shake. Not vehicles, but our defense silos and laser batteries. The missiles had come direct angle to the ground as if launched in orbit, for our silos were hidden deep in the mountains, and their flying arc was cut off by the thrusters. Mighty technology of the Emperor indeed. A great defense battery to our sides turns the morning into midday with its reckless salvo of shining light. So bright our black carapaces and our pauldrons glowed in its light. Suddenly the once green plain burst into hells of fire. We watched delighted as we began to see figures emerging from the wrecked vehicles. We open up in semi-automatic bursts of our bolts. Despite our opening fire, the untransported berserkers pushed forward. A foolish act, and many of the traitors are turned into carcasses. Still many are not brought down, their unholy power armor and bloodlust protecting them to rush forward. My thoughts drift. Would we evacuate the wall on time? Would we leave cowardly? I knew there was knowing until the time came, so I kept pouring the fire on the arch enemy. The doubt floats, more shells hit the ground as we pour on them recklessly. I fire but do not aim, my focus is shattered. I look at Valorius and I see the yellow pauldron of our badge. I feel the clearness of duty for more moments and scream, "Death to the traitors!" The last belt feeding my heavy bolter runs dry. I lower to take another belt. There was far more ammo than any of us could use in a single engagement. The armoured column is at 600 metres. We hear a cess by the Forge Master through the Vox, and the channel remains open for another split second. Brace for impact! Far away, concealed positions, we see 6 vertically incoming missiles. Valorius lowers behind cover alongside me. One coordinated earth-shattering explosion hits the wall. I'm thrown off balance, dropping on the ground to my knees. Despite the heavy armor, I get to my feet first, looking around. Our section is intact, but we hear a great collapse. More dust rises as dense as fog from the very structure of our walls. Such was the might of the explosion. But this would not stop an Astartes. My helm sensors activate, allowing me to see through the dust. I move to the left and look. "The walls are breached," Knight Saris informs. I remain silent for a few seconds more. The dust begins to settle on our black armor and in our respirators, creating a strange dustiness bubbling from our Vox grills. We raise up and keep firing. I feel the sweat and excitement of combat. Another deadly barrage of missiles hits the enemy. The nearby cannon does not fire. "The power has been cut," Valorius answers my unasked question. We had fought so much together. This was but another day of duty, but it was not. We see the traitor column funneling into the breach, or so we imagined, for it could not be seen from our post. The enemy was now entering the breach. The demon engines. "Evacuate the wall!" the order was given by the sergeant. I kept firing regardless. They had to die. "Evacuate!" Knight Valorous screams and grabs me by the shoulder pad. "What are you thinking, Novus?" I turn and go back to my senses. I touch my purity seal. They will die, I swear it. We leave our battlements with our heavy steps, out of which we cannot see much of the other wall. A big parade ground stands, usually filled with training knights and testing aspirants. We run through the walls to the descending poles. Dust cloud enters the square like a mere fog from the height of the walls. Under the conditions, we Storm Knights would be tested for war. Knight Valerius leads the way. He was calm and ruthless in war. We reunite with some of our wayward squad members. Knight Demaz gives his customary encouragement. "Keep going, for the lion!" As I close to the pole, the wall shakes, creating more dust. Knight Valerius loses balance near the pole hole. I grab him by the arm, his bolter, which hits me sideways on the head. I can see every bit of dust settling on the gun's mechanism, like it sets on every joint of our bodies and on our eye slits and armor. But no mere dust, nor the worst conditions would stop our armors, nor our holy bolter's wrath. There was 100 meters between us and where the pole ended, and so we hugged the metal bar and descended, screeching metal on metal, even causing sparks as we attempt to slow down. I hit the ground hard, but not as hard as dropping from orbit, I smiled, thinking. So simple was the thrill of combat. I was on the parade ground. 15 meters to my left, my sergeant descended. The square was a chaotic battlefield. Already from the breach of many demon engines had poured and destroyed, while others run havoc in our gun line formed by rhinos and predators. Manned by serfs at whose side Knight stood proudly. "Knights, we advance to the end of the square and scree up to the banner." We organised in mere seconds into a 7-man unit and headed forward. Our fellow knights were fighting 400 meters away from us. The gun line was so engaged with the first of the vehicles and the fastest of the berserkers, or rather those who had preserved their vehicles. We advanced like a pack around the sergeant. He orders and coordinates. Our heavy boot steps mark a fast pace over the smooth and resilient flagstones. We head straight into the scree, faster every second, for our fellow knights were abandoning their Rhino and Predator gun line. Heading up the scree. Probably something was going horribly wrong according to any plan, but I did not give it any thought. I turned my head slightly to the direction of the walls. Hundreds are coming, plus we were being followed by 8 berserkers of the 12th Legion. The sergeant was well aware of this fact. They would catch us before we would be able to cook them, and meters before this scree began he growled, "Halt!" He raised his chainsword and turned to the pursuers. The sergeant, being the expert he was, opened fire with his bolter in a one-handed grip. "Fire!" he bellowed. In a coordinated and well-practiced volley we fired. I put every intent on the round, which exited the barrel, accelerating the round as it went. It hit one berserker high on the chestplate, glancing and going up through his neck inside his helm, decorated by demonic horns carrying shattered skulls. The berserker collapsed on the ground, like the mere bloodlusting dog it was. 2 out of 8, Knight Daimaz encouraged. Another volley and another round of bolts. Another volley and another shot. Rounds glancing, still many made combat. 4 out of 8, I growled as more heretics fell. And so they were upon us. In the last lucky round, another falls, crawling angrily through the ground like a rabid dog. We take our knives. I grab my knife with monstrous intent. One heavily injured traitor launches on me. I set forward and to the side. The foe, injuredly unreactive, misses to bite with his chain axe. I have at his side and stab crouched up below his armpit. The berserker flows first in an enraged howl. I place myself on top and thrust his left elbow, which held the chain axe, with my other hand. Holding a holy instrument of war, I point to his head. My dirty black armor fills with Astarte's blood. One bloody tear through my forehead and eye. "For Talanor!" I bellow. I look to the ongoing melee. I see Knight Valorous dead, chainsword through his stomach. Still he made his last wish. A Chaos Astartes lied with his neck split thanks to his knife, Valorous' knife. I look up the slope and see our banner beside it. Cetail, Valanoris, and his Terminator guards, all armed with their swords, their yellow pauldrons standing out, giving us hope in the chapter's future. Their armour and colour and our banner stood defiant against the enemy, followed by the cursed dust cloud which engulfed the walls. Now only existing in my memory, not even a sensor could penetrate such a dense fog. I climb up the hill and straight to the enemy, careless of my squad who would probably become destroyed taking the Knight Astartes down. The Chaos Space Marines gather for an assault in the defilement of our banner and our monastery. Like a pack of hungry wolves they begin to carefully surround as rounds were exchanged by both sides. By my side the sergeant follows, and he gives me one last order. "This will be our last charge! Show them, brother!" "For the Emperor and the Lion," we screamed, and it did not go unnoticed. As we screamed, the enemy sets upon our banner, and all the remaining knights rallied around, and it became a deadly whirlwind of guns, swords, and fury. 2 havocs turned their heavy bolters upon us. They were covered in destroyed limbs and unholy heraldry. Our sergeant, who lost his bolter in the previous fight, runs even faster. Out of the chaotic melee being fought around the banner, one Terminator emerges, his assault cannon spinning, delivering a deadly barrage on the 2 havocs, splintering them and dropping them like trees. I close as fast as possible on their dying cadavers and kick one of them, putting his stomach upwards. "This is for Valorous, traitor!" I deliver a round on his stomach and step on his exposed guts. Luckily, his enhanced anatomy allows him to live slightly longer. I look up as the traitor twists like a dying bug. The monstrous Knight warlord challenges Cetal Velanoris. He accepts it, but before they engage, an emplacement of Chaos Astartes jumps on our glorious chapter master. The traitor is dispatched in an elegant plasma shot to his head. Chaos Warlord's power armor, once an elegant piece of machinery, now but a deformed extension of his demonic body. Spikes of unholy origin are mixed with skulls and dark symbols, his armor seemingly alive as he moves sporadically. The warlord defiantly raises his two-handed demonic axe. Our great chapter master stood fearless, his relic blade ready to deliver any counter-strike at any moment. Suddenly the warlord growls in fury and recklessly charges our mighty hero. He avoids the blow narrowly, but merely cuts superficially before being rammed by the cornate beast. He loses balance but remains on his 2 feet, his sword held vertically as the warp-fueled warlord raises his axe. Knight Novus, what happened next? I'm asked by the new chapter master. I don't know. I'm the only one. My new robotic voice answers and questions. Yes, the new master speaks. So many fought bravely, and I received this great and unearned honor, entombed like a hero for being nothing more than a surviving corpse. Leave me out of my dishonor in battle, my new voice screamed like a metallic fury. You were found alongside the finest. Your foe carried a sword of unspeakable origin, but you carried your knife. And there we go. A Knight's Courage by Axel, which I think is actually pretty good in explaining how the Storm Knights died. And I like the idea of there being a lone battle brother, barely alive, clinging to, the ruins of the planet. So when Sixth Company and Chapter Master Hyperion shows up, they actually have an account of what happened. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, cheerio for listening, lads. I do much appreciate it. As I said, the next one is actually a short story about the Lamenters I've been writing. The Lamenters are my personal favourite chapter of all time, and there's a lot of backstory and lore and stories I think should have been written about them years ago that I'm kind of taking upon it myself to do. So there we go. Anyway, cheery bye, lads.